outside of Bitcoin, there are things we can do, and there are technologies we can develop, and plenty of alternatives we can make, whether it's currency or something else. But it's time for people to focus on those alternatives and focus on developing those solutions. Why it's still much easier to communicate freely, because I think it's quite likely that as we, go into the next few years, as we get closer to the year 2030, it's going to become harder to communicate online, and people need to, rapidly think about what we're going to do to face this stuff. And a lot of it involves building alternative systems.
In a recent interview with Whitney Webb on Neil Oliver's show, we explore Bitcoin, billionaire agendas, and invasive privacy software. After Bitcoin's recent price fluctuations, Webb unpacks the complexities of how certain billionaires are positioning themselves as saviors while potentially compromising our privacy. At the time of this discussion, Bitcoin is around $57,000, with under a 6% increase in the last 24 hours and a 13% decrease in the last 7 days, with over 19 million Bitcoins in circulation. As Whitney Webb dissects the intricate web of financial conspiracies and banking interests, it becomes clear that the implications reach far beyond cryptocurrency. Before we dive into this eye-opening discussion, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this channel for more cutting-edge insights into financial conspiracies and market analyses. Now, let's hear more from Whitney Webb as she shares her perspectives on the hidden agendas shaping our financial future.
I think, there was, for example, you bringing up Bitcoin, maybe initially with Bitcoin, there was some promise there. But I think, in a lot of my recent work on this with the former editor-in-chief of Bitcoin Magazine, Mark Goodwin, we focused a lot on how in recent years, really beginning in 2010, if not earlier, there's been a major effort to capture Bitcoin and the infrastructure and essentially dollarize it, have it become, a tool of U.S. dollar hegemony. And there's a lot of efforts to link it to these U.S. dollar stable coins that are very questionable, whether it's Tether, USDT.
Tethering, yeah.
Yes, or Circle, USDC, which is very much tied to BlackRock. Tether was very much tied to the FTX scandal, and also has a lot of interesting ties to the Epstein crowd as well, if you go far enough back. And these are sort of being framed as alternatives, but, Tether, for example, recently allowed onto its platform the FBI and the Secret Service to surveil users and decide what wallets they can just shut down at will, and have said that they want to be a key partner of the U.S. in expanding dollar hegemony globally. Ultimately, Bitcoin was framed as something that's going to stop irresponsible money printing and central bank policy and government fiscal policy. But what's happening right now is that there's efforts to basically use Bitcoin as a sink to hyperinflate into. So basically, to make it the greatest enabler ever of that irresponsible central bank policy. And I think, that's part of why, this effort to sort of dominate a lot of the infrastructure around Bitcoin, the on and off ramps, is why you're seeing people like BlackRock's Larry Fink changing his tune on Bitcoin, and allegedly Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan has, and all of these other Wall Street guys, because they think it's something they can use and they can control. And sure, people can use it, but the way they're trying to set it up and impose it and develop regulations for it, they're going to try and prevent the use cases where it actually would enable freedom. So for those, that are in the Bitcoin community or developers, now is the time to try and develop solutions that hedge against that. Because again, it's important to be vigilant in the Bitcoin community, just like so many other communities in sort of this effort to fight against tyranny. They're being told, just sit back in your armchair, relax, trust the plan. And Bitcoin, because it's so great, will magically solve all of these problems, while, they're basically making it this tool of the dollar and all of that. And that sort of effort to sell people into this complacent mindset is happening across the board. And I think it's something we really, really need to resist. We're being lulled to sleep. And it reminds me a lot of, QAnon in the Trump era, where we just need to sit back and trust the plan, even though Trump is not keeping his campaign promises and doing things that are very against what he campaigned on. We need to hold our politicians to account. We need to hold people in media to account, and really, just be, have individual responsibility. I feel like I'm just a broken record with that, but I think I think it's very important. And at this point, even if Bitcoin is co-opted, I think there are things that can be done to use it, sort of invert what they're trying to do to it, and use it to sort of counter aspects of what the elite are doing. For example, there's technology that's a part of Bitcoin now that can be used to uncensorably publish documents and distribute it to everyone with a Bitcoin node instantly and have it not be able to be erased. We could make that, use that as a way to really cut out the social media censorship and make it so that important information gets out to people.
As we just heard Whitney Webb passionately discuss the potential dangers lurking behind Bitcoin's popularity, let's dive deeper into the role of billionaires in this financial landscape. Webb elaborates on how certain wealthy individuals are leveraging the crypto movement to further their own agendas, providing insights that challenge conventional thinking about decentralized finance. This discussion highlights the alarming convergence of cryptocurrency enthusiasm and surveillance capitalism. Webb explains how influential figures in Silicon Valley and beyond are using Bitcoin as a Trojan horse to introduce invasive privacy-invading software under the guise of financial innovation. She reveals the unsettling truth about how these tech giants and financial moguls are collaborating with intelligence agencies to erode our financial privacy and autonomy. Now, let's listen to what Whitney Webb has to say about the privacy-invading software being developed under financial innovation.
There's been a lot of manipulations on the public in trying to change our perception of who these people are and what they do, but consistently these particular networks, a lot of whom are connected to organized crime, have been engaging crisis after crisis that the world has experienced in massive wealth transfers for us to them. And COVID's a great example of that. Where, so many people that seem to have apparent foreknowledge that something drastic was coming, were able to benefit so hugely economically, while the rest of us, obviously have been left in a very different situation. And it's true if you look at the 2008 financial crisis or any number of other financial crises, that have happened in the past 100 years. You have pretty consistent wealth transfer to the point where like the 0.1% of the world have such an insane amount of wealth and power at this point. And we're still being so manipulated by them to the point where, at least in the United States right now, people are clamoring for competing squads of billionaires to save the country. So, you might have Donald Trump and Elon Musk on one side, and then all the Democratic Party donors, many of whom are from Silicon Valley, like Eric Schmidt and Pierre Omidyar, and a lot of these other big names, these oligarch figures, which billionaire faction is going to save us all. But ultimately, at the end of the day, they've been stealing our wealth and convincing us to give away our freedoms in exchange for what they promise is security. But we don't get security. We just get less and less freedom. And we're essentially being herded into what I would argue is sort of a technocratic nightmare, the cornerstone of which is this digital ID agenda, which is meant to be linked to some sort of digital wallet that contains programmable, surveillable money, either a CBDC issued by a central bank or issued by a private bank. And I think ultimately what people need to do is not focus so much on these political saviors being put out in front of us, but focus on what we're going to do to not comply with the digital ID agenda and these other things that they need in order to push us into this world that they've been building. And I would really appreciate it if people would focus on that again, because I think there was a lot of consciousness generated around that during COVID, for example, where people rightly, in my opinion, pointed out that vaccine passports are really sort of a trial run for a lot of this broader digital ID stuff. But, the digital ID stuff is marching full speed ahead. And now in the United States, a lot of the people that were critical of it as vaccine passports are essentially calling for it. I mean, you have people like Trump on the campaign trail saying the U.S. desperately needs a biometric entry-exit system. And you have this campaign lawyer going on podcasts saying we need to scan our face and our eyeballs in order to be able to vote in the United States. If we need voter ID, why can't we just use a physical ID? Or something like that. Why does it have to be biometric and digital? And then you see that, the Trump campaign, just like the Democratic Party, are beholden to these Silicon Valley donors. A good example of that would be Trump's recent VP pick, J.D. Vance, who's intimately tied up with Peter Thiel, who created a CIA-funded data mining companies that are surveilling Americans and profiling them for intelligence based on our online activity, and are very much invested in these digital ID agendas and digital wallet agendas. in these programmable, surveillable currencies. And again, I think we need to focus more on what we can do as people and as communities, and not think that we can just sit back in our armchair and just vote, once every 4 years or once every, X number of years between election cycles, and everything's going to be magically better. I think people need to take responsibility and think about what we can do as people to opt out of these systems that they're trying to impose on us. It's part of the manipulations that target the public, or to make us think that we're powerless and we have no power. And these people have invested so much money on finding every excuse they can to try and get us, in the case of digital ID, get us to voluntarily want to adopt it. And we have to focus on the fact that if digital ID does not succeed and people do not comply, it will fail. I mean, it is the cornerstone of like the entire UN Agenda 2030. Without it, the programmable, surveillable money won't work. A lot of their designs for what they want to do in the online virtual world will not work. And so much of it will not work if we do not comply with digital ID, and they're trying to force it on us as a voluntary thing, sort of in the same way that vaccine passports were voluntary, which is why I encourage people, if you want to change the direction the world is going, you need to figure out how you are going to set up your life so you don't have to comply with digital ID the same way, maybe if you were forced to comply with vaccine mandates and vaccine passports, how will you get around those type of restrictions when they try and impose, digital ID on people for various reasons? As I said earlier, before it was about, the vaccine and all of that. Now in the US, conservatives mainly are being pitched as this is a solution to illegal migration. This is a solution to voter fraud and all of this stuff. There's efforts to frame biometric digital ID as essential to solving cybercrime and hacking and cyberbullying and any other normal of essentially any ill of society. They're just going to say digital ID is going to be the solution to that. And they're sales pitches. But ultimately, if we, the digital ID is essential to the whole idea of the social credit score and any of these other, Orwellian designs that, at least enough people I hope know by now, is part and parcel of this agenda. And I think, again, it comes up to people having to make a choice. And the way they do this is through, they try and get us to comply with this is through convenience. It's convenience to opt in. It's convenient to have a digital ID. It's convenient to have, money on your phone and have your whole life be based on your smartphone and all of this. It's convenient to vote once every 4 years for one of the two lesser evils in all of this. But really, it's the convenience that they're using to enslave us. And it's inconvenient to find ways to opt out of these systems and change your life so that you're more resilient and your life is actually sustainable for you and your family and your community. It's perhaps inconvenient to get off of the couch and off of the chair and go meet your neighbors physically and stop being on the online world so much, and making real human connections and real human solutions to the problems we're facing. Because, again, that's why during COVID, the lockdowns, I think, were a big part of it, to keep people isolated, to keep people from connecting and force people to feel like they could only connect with others through this virtual world that these people control. Because they control the infrastructure, the software, and the platforms. So I think, people need to consider that this convenience is really the carrot. Maybe there will be a stick at some point, but they seem to be focused a lot on the carrot and the idea of having us voluntarily adopt these things because it's easy, the way they're setting things up, or it will be easy. Or they'll frame it that way at least. But I think it's very important for people to realize that they have the power. Otherwise, they wouldn't be investing all this money to manipulate us and pitch us on this. And, I think it's important for people to think critically about what's being done. And I think, there's a lot of efforts to manipulate prominent voices in alternative media for the purpose of getting people who have realized these agendas during COVID, at least, or maybe before, to come back sort of into the fold and trust certain people that are selling these particular solutions under different metrics. And anyway, again, I think, there is a lot of hope, and a lot of people, listen to my interviews or read my reports and think it's, very black pilling or depressing and whatever. But ultimately, I think it's more depressing to feel like we don't have any power to change things, only the billionaires do, I think that's a very depressing outlook, personally. And I think these are people we should not be trusting, considering the state of the world and where we are going. And we should take the power back as people. And we do that by taking actions in our own lives and doing things in our neighborhoods and our communities and with our families. And realizing that this is not where we want to go at the end of the day. And there is so much we can do. And I think a good starting point, again, is to say no to digital ID. We don't need this biometric digital ID surveillance state that's going to be used not just to surveil what we're doing in real time, but also to predict what we might do in the future. A lot of these plans on the books and things that are being developed by these intelligence agencies are all about predictive policing, meaning pre-crime, and also applying that same methodology to healthcare. Prevent the next pandemic before it happens and all of this stuff. So you don't even need to declare a pandemic anymore to get emergency use authorization or mandates in particular communities and stuff like that. That is the world they are setting up. It is very bad, and we should opt out, and we can opt out.
To watch the full, unfiltered interview with Whitney Webb, check out the link in the description. In this compelling discussion, Webb exposes the potential dark underbelly of the cryptocurrency revolution and its ties to broader financial conspiracies. We would love to hear your thoughts on some questions. How might the involvement of billionaires in cryptocurrency affect your financial privacy? And what steps can individuals take to protect their digital autonomy in an increasingly surveilled financial system? Thank you for tuning in to Only the Savvy. If you enjoyed this discussion, please subscribe, like, and share our video for more engaging content diving into the innovative world of hidden forces shaping our economic landscape.